Okay, so good day, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us today. You are welcome to another webinar by D Brown Consulting. My name is Wokolo Desmond. I'm an analyst here at D Brown Consulting, and I'm very excited to be here. So before we get into it, I want you to type in the chat box, where are you joining us from? Are you joining us from Lagos? Are you joining us from Port Harcourt? Are you joining us from Egypt? Are you joining us from Ethiopia? Anywhere? I just want you to type in the chat box, tell me where you're joining from. So I am joining from Lagos, Nigeria. So I'd love to know. Type in the chat box, where are you joining from? Okay, good. I see Faith. Faith is joining from Lagos. You're welcome, Faith. Jalil is joining from Enugu. You're welcome, Jalil. Ruth is joining from Lagos. You're welcome. You're welcome. So I want more people. John says he's joining from Lagos. Okay, Ruth from Lagos. Thank you. You're all welcome. Oh, we have somebody from Mali, Musa CDB. You're welcome. Timothy from Adamawa. You are welcome. You're welcome to today's webinar. So you're welcome to another webinar by D Brown Consulting. This is the second series of our Excel series, How to Use Excel Like a Pro. We have Emeka from PH. You are welcome. So, like I said, this is the second session in our series, How to Use Excel Like a Pro, right? So I'm sure when you hear the word how to use Excel like a pro, one thing that will be coming to your mind will be, okay, we are going to be doing something quite complex, or we might be using advanced formulas, right? We might be using long advanced formulas today, but no, that is not the case. So what we're trying to do today, what we're trying to achieve today, is to introduce you to two tools that will move you from someone who just uses Excel to someone who can use Excel to answer business questions and to make real decisions, right? I like to call those tools rather the Excel what if toolkit. And those tools are sensitivity analysis tool and your scenario manager tool, right? So I want you to type in the chat box how many of us have been in this situation, right? So where we were working, we were asked, okay, I want you to, let's say, create a forecast or prepare a budget, right? We digged out data, we came up with something we felt was solid, and then your boss or your senior asks you, what if these numbers you use to create these budgets or these assumptions you are depending on as an estimate, what if they are wrong, right? And then you are just stuck. How many of us have found ourselves in such situation? I want you to type in the chat box. I myself have been in that kind of situation before. So I just want to hear from you how many of us have found ourselves in that kind of situation, right? So well, before I proceed, let me hear from us. Nobody. So in order for you not to be in that kind of situation where your boss asks you that kind of question and you are stuck, that is why we are introducing this tool to you, right? So what this tool is going to help you do is this tool will help you to be able to build a forecast, and instead of going with one single number, you will be able to go with a range of outcomes, right? Right. So before we go into Excel proper, before we start looking at how the sensitivity analysis tool work and how the scenario manager tool work, I would like to just explain a few concepts to you, right? So in the course of this webinar, you'll be hearing me use words like input or assumptions, right? You'll be hearing me use words like outputs, right? So I want you to be able to understand I want you to be able to understand what I mean when I'm using those words. Now, I want you to just think as input as the numbers that drive your forecast, right? They are the numbers we can change. And when you are talking about forecast, what are these inputs? There are inputs, they revolve around things like, okay, what quantity do we expect we are going to sell in the nearest future, right? What would be our unit price? What do we think exchange rate will be? What do we think interest rates will be? What do we think fuel price will be, right? That's why I say they are the numbers that drive our forecast. So when you hear me use the word output, I'm talking about metrics that are important to us as a business. I'm talking about metrics that are important to us as a business. As a business, we want to know, right? What is our total revenue? What is our total expense? What is our profit, and the likes. So whenever you hear me use words like outputs, know that I'm talking about metrics that are important to us as a business. So before let me demonstrate what I mean by input and output. So tell me when you type in that, when you can see my screen chat, type in the chat box. When you can see my screen, type in the chat box. Okay, confirmed. You can see my screen, right? So I said inputs are the numbers that we can change, right? They're the numbers that drive our forecast. What do I mean? So I have created something like a sample forecast here. These are inputs, and these are outputs. So we said they are the numbers that drive our forecast. So look what happens. If I change this number, what happens? We can see that this revenue changes, right? If I change this number, what happens? We can see that this number has changed, right? So that is the relationship between input and output in forecasting or in modeling or in Excel generally, right? Inputs are the numbers you can change, outputs are the results or the metrics that we care about as a business. So before I move to sensitivity analysis and scenario manager, I want you to understand what kind of problem we use this tool to solve, right? So I want you to think of yourself as an analyst, right? You work in a manufacturing company, Q1 just ended. Let's say your boss tells you, okay, I want you to build a forecast that will show us how our business will perform in the next quarter, right? So you go and dig up data, you create something you feel is fantastic, right? You run with price, you say, okay, this is going to be my price, this is what we feel we're going to sell our pro this is what we feel we are going to sell our products as. This is the quantity we think we are going to sell. This is what we think full price will be. This is what we think exchange rate will be, right? So you work with those assumptions, you come up with a beautiful forecast, and then you tell your boss, okay, you have come up with this. This is what you think our business performance is going to be. This is what we think based on your assumption. This is what we think the revenue will be. This is what we think our profit will be, right? And then your boss asks you, okay, you said fuel price is going to be 700, right? Let's say interest rate. You said interest rate is going to be 1.3, right? What if interest rate is 1.5 and fuel price increases to like 2,000? What happens? In that kind of situation, you are definitely stuck, right? Because you have come in with one number. So two things are going to happen is that maybe you're going to go quiet, tell your boss, okay, you are going to come back with him with a new number, or you start guessing, right? So that particular problem is what scenario manager and sensitivity analysis is trying to solve. That particular problem is what scenario manager and sensitivity analysis is trying to solve. Those tools are just going to help you to create different outcomes so that whenever you are presenting to a board, you are presenting to your board, to maybe your boss or your supervisor, you can have a range of outcome so that whenever you are presented with all these what if problems, you'll be able to speak to those numbers without having to come back or without going there with a single number. So I'm going to speak on these two tools, and then we are going to demonstrate how these tools work, right? So the first one is sensitivity analysis. So what is sensitivity analysis trying to help us achieve? Sensitivity analysis is just saying if one or two of my inputs or assumptions, I said inputs are data or numbers that drive our forecast. If one or two of my inputs changes, how will it affect my output? We said outputs are metrics that are important to the business, right? So if one or two of my assumption changes, how will it affect this metric that is important to our business? That is just what sensitivity is all about, right? And then you're going to use the sensitivity tool to then create multiple scenarios so that whenever you're presenting or whatever you want to see, if you want to see 10 different what ifs, right? What if price is this and volume is that? Or price, okay, what if price increases by 10%, volume drops by 10%, right? That's one scenario. What if price increases by 20% and volume increases by, let's say, 5%? What if price increases by 100%, volume drops by 50%? You'll be able to see all those different scenarios all at once. That is the power of sensitivity analysis. But there's a limitation with sensitivity analysis, right? The limitation is that sensitivity analysis only limits us to using one or two assumptions and applying that logic on one outcome. What do I mean? So sensitivity analysis can only make us, let's say, take one, two inputs and see the effects on one output, right? That's the limitation of sensitivity analysis. But in the real world, it's possible that I want to see, okay, what if all these my inputs change? What is going to be the effect of my revenue and gross profit? Right? So this is logic. For sensitivity analysis say, what is the effect of one or two of my inputs on one of my outputs, right? What's the effect if one or two of these assumptions, what's the effect of if one or two of these assumptions change on this metric that is important to me, right? But in the real world, when you're dealing with uncertainty, it goes beyond one or two assumptions, right? It's possible we can have, I don't know, it's possible we can even have 10 scenarios, right? Sorry, 10 assumptions. And we want to see, okay, the most important metrics to us, let's say the most important metrics to us in this forecast is gross profit and gross margin. We might want to say, okay, if all these inputs change, what is the effect on these two outputs that are important to me, right? So sensitivity analysis limits us to just two inputs and one outcome, but scenario manager does not limit us. In using scenario manager, you can change 10 assumptions, and you can say, okay, you want to see the effect of the change in these 10 assumptions on, let's say, three of my most important outputs. So that is the beauty of this what if analysis tool, right? They kind of solve the same problem, but it's just that with sensitivity analysis, there's a limit on the number of assumptions we can update, right? So we've been talking. Let us now put this concept, let's put this concept into context. Yeah. So we are going to be using a case study. We're going to be using a case study to demonstrate. Okay, we're going to be using a case study to demonstrate how these tools work. But okay, I want you to type in the chat which of these two tools do you feel will help you in your day-to-day work, right? Before we look at our case study, I want you to type in the chat which of these two tools do you feel is going to be the most important to you in your day-to-day work based on your understanding of what we've spoken about so far. So I want you to type in the chat. I'm only giving a few seconds for that. Both. Lovely. Lovely. Both. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now let's use our case study to apply this concept, and then we'll see how they work. Okay, so we have this case study here. And this case study focuses on a consumer packaging goods company, right? Zenith Food Co. Zenith Food Co. is trying to launch a new product in the market. They're trying to launch a snack bar called Pure Bites. Okay, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Joma. So they said they're trying to launch a new product called Snack Bites, right? They say that this in order to launch this product, they will need to make an investment of 900,000 upfront. The finance team has prepared a 5-year projection based on certain metrics, right? So the finance team came up with a base case. So I'm just summarizing the case study, right? The finance team came up with a base case estimate based on maybe their research, experience, data available to them. They said that the unit selling price is going to be $45. The unit variable cost is going to be $27. Annual volume is going to be 40,000 units. Fixed cost is going to be 250,000 a year. Fixed cost is going to be 250,000 a year. The discount rate we are going to use to evaluate this project is 12%, while the upfront investment is 900,000. So they said on paper, base case numbers, Pure Bite generates a positive NPV, right? But the board is not comfortable with one number. The board is not comfortable with no number. If you see here, they say realistically, the fuel price could range between $35 to $55 based on how competitors price. They say variable costs have been volatile. So that variable cost is volatile, right? So we cannot just put our foot down and say this is going to be the actual variable cost in the nearest future. Annual volume would be dependent on how our marketing and how the marketing launch performs. Annual volume will be dependent on how the marketing launch performs, right? So basically, the board wants a range before committing 900,000. Remember, we said that whenever you're working with a forecast, it is always ideal to go in with a range. You cannot just go in with a single number and say, this is going to be this, right? It's going to create a problem in the long run because you would not be able to plan for different you will not be able to plan for different situations. So I'm seeing someone said we should drop it in the chat box. So what we are going to do is, for those that stay to the end of this webinar, they are going to get this Excel. They're going to get the Excel workbook and they'll get the case study. Right? Okay, that's how we're going to do it. So, like I said, the board is not comfortable with one number. They want a range. So they gave us a tax. And what is that tax? First, they said sensitivity. They say, how does the project NPV move if price and volume both come in worse or better than expected at the same time? Before I proceed, I want to explain what project NPV is, right? So what project NPV tells us is, we just use it to evaluate a project, right? A project NPV is either positive or negative. If a project NPV is negative, that means that the value we are going to generate from that project is less than the cost of executing that project. If a project NPV is positive, that means that the value we are going to generate from that project is higher than the cost of executing that project. So it's very ideal for us to ensure that the project NPV is positive. So don't forget that the finance team has come up with a base year estimate, right? So it means that the finance team has come up with their own NPV, but the board is not comfortable with that. It's not when working with these tools, or when we say whenever you need to have a range, nobody is saying that your assumptions or your forecast is not right or is not reasonable, right? The only thing is that in business there are a lot of set uncertainties, and you want to be able to plan for different scenarios. So that's what it is. So basically the first task is sensitivity analysis. Remember we said sensitivity analysis helps us to say, if this my input, if one or two of my inputs move, how would my output or the metric that is important to me react? So remember we said this is a metric, right? This is an input and this is an input. So they are asking us, if price and volume move either for better or for worse, what is the effect on our NPV? So that is sensitivity analysis. So the other task they gave us, they said, if we define a realistic worst case, base case, best case, each with a full internally consistent set of assumptions, not just one variable moving, what does the range of outcome look like, right? So these two tools, what they help us to do is, whenever we're working with a forecast, they help us to create a range, right? They help us to create scenarios. What if price is this, volume is this, for price is this, interest rate is this, exchange rate is this? What if? As much scenarios you want to create, you can use these tools to create them. So the second task is, they are telling us to create 3 scenarios: a best case scenario, a worst case scenario, and a best case scenario, and then they want to see what the range of outcome would be. So now we are going to demonstrate how to use these tools. So firstly, we'll be starting with sensitivity analysis. And sensitivity analysis and scenario manager live under the data tab in the what if section. That is where these two tools live, in the data tab and under the what if section, right? So we have scenario manager and we have data table. I know you must be wondering, since you have seen scenario manager, where is sensitivity analysis? This is sensitivity analysis table, right? So Excel calls this data table, but we at Dbran, we just like to call it sensitivity analysis table, because I mean that's what we use this tool to solve, right? Sensitivity analysis. So I'm going to click this table, and then I see a dialog box. I'm hoping this is visible. I see a dialog box. One row is saying row input cell, another row is saying column input cell. So looking at this dialog box, what do we understand? One thing I'll say I understand is that it gives us the opportunity to run a sensitivity analysis with one input, and also to run a sensitivity analysis with 2 inputs, right? So although the board asks us to run a 2 input sensitivity analysis, I will first show you how to run a 1 input sensitivity analysis, and then we'll see how to run a 2 input sensitivity analysis. So let's jump right to it. Going through it again, this is what we're trying to do. We want to test the sensitivity of the project NPV. Right? So let's start from there. Remember, in the dialog box, they said row input cell and column input cell. So what that means is that your inputs could either be in a row or column, or row and column. So we're going to run a 1 input sensitivity analysis. In this case, we'll be testing the sensitivity. How sensitive our project NPV is to changes in price. So remember, the board has said realistically they feel the price will range from $35 to $45, right? So let us create a range. So this is going to be my first. I'm going to bring the input here. Let me create a range. Let's just say 55, 40. Nope. 55, 50, 45, 40, 35. So just for presentation purpose, if you are doing an internal analysis, this part I want to do might not be necessary. But if you are presenting to maybe your senior, to the board, it's just ideal for you to kind of make it look, should I use the word presentable? So I can just do this. Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to know how sensitive, or let me use the word what if. I want to know what is my project NPV going to be. What if my price is $55? What is my project NPV going to be? What if my price is $50? What is my project NPV going to be? What if my price is $40? What's my project NPV going to be? And we could do that. If you want to see, if you have the time and you want to see a hundred different scenario, right? It's your choice. That's the power of this toolkit we are introducing to you, right? So whenever you want to use this table, you are going to bring your output here. And the output we want to look at, the metric we want to look at is our project NPV. So I say equals to, right? So we have this here. So what do? I analyze this space. I go to data, I go to what if analysis, I go to my sensitivity analysis table, and then it asks me my input cell, is it a row or is it in a column? So you remember Excel 101, right? Horizontal is rows, vertical is column. And if you see where I have my inputs are arranged vertically. So I'm going to go to column input cell. Now, your inputs, what this range you have here, what inputs, or should I use the word, what does it represent? This range represents unit price. So I'm going to come here and say unit price. Once I press enter, look at this. So Excel has given me a range. So tomorrow, if I'm going to present to the board, I can say, although base case estimate is 40, if we have a price of 45 naira in the base case, we have a positive NPV, right? But at 55 naira, the NPV will be higher, right? We now know that on no account should we price our product, all things being equal, on no account should we price our product at $35, because if we price our product at $35, we are going to have a negative NPV. And what does a negative NPV signify? It means that the project is going to cost more than the value we are going to get from the project, right? You see how we have used this to aid management decision, right? To answer some certain questions, right? Now, let us look at how a 2-unit sensitivity analysis work. So I want to see, yes, some of the recording is going to be available after the webinar, right? And if you stay to the end, you are going to get this Excel file with the case study. Okay, the font size is small. Jalil, how about now? Please, I want you to type, how about now? Is it better? So now we're going to see how a two-way sensitivity. Please, am I audible? Okay, thank you. So now we're going to see how a two-way sensitivity analysis work, right? So what we're just trying to say is the board asks us to check how, if my price is this and volume is this, what would be my NPV, Remember, we said sensitivity analysis, we use it to check how a certain metric reacts to changes in one or two inputs. So the second input I'll be adding here is volume, because the board said they want to see how MPV will change as different quantity. So I'm going to change the formatting. Yes, the cell is formatted. Yes, I purposely made the red. I purposely made it that when it is negative, it should be red. That answer is for Abdul Razak. So here is for volume, so we shouldn't be seeing dollars. Yes, Abdul Razak, we formatted the cells that whenever it is negative, it's going to show red. Because it might be hard to tell if it's negative or not if there's not something that flashes, right? So this is the second input we are working with, which is annual volume. So we're now moving to the tax that the board gave us. I just wanted to demonstrate how a one input sensitivity analysis table works. So for presentation purpose, I'm just going to do this. But like I said, if your analysis is internal, maybe you're just doing an analysis for yourself, you don't need to do all this. So let me put a border down. I'll put a border here to just make it very presentable. Right? So now we want to answer the board question. Let's go back to our case study. The board said, how does the NPV move if price and volume both come in worse or better, right? Remember, in our base case estimate, we said price will be 45 and we said volume will be 40. But now for price, look at 45 here. This is if price comes out better, if price comes out worse. Base case 40,000. If volume comes out better, if volume comes out worse. So you don't need to. It's because of because we want to be, should I use the word punctual? You could create more scenarios. If you like, you could get these prices to 10, right? You could start this volume from 10,000 and head up to 100,000. With the sensitivity analysis table too, you'll be able to see you'll be able to see those different answers or different outcomes all at once, right? So when you're using a two-way sensitivity analysis, you are going to link your output to this angle, right? And remember, our output is MPV. So our output doesn't have to be MPV, it could be profit. We want to see, okay, if price is this and another volume is this, what is our profit going to be? So your output should always, it's just going to be a metric that you feel is important, but we're just going to focus on what the board asks us to do, which is for MPV, right? So I've brought our output here. The positioning of these outputs are very important. Remember, when it was one-way sensitivity, we had the inputs here and we had the output here, right? But now it's a two-way, we had the output here. So I'm going to highlight, I'm going to come to data, I'll come to what if analysis, go to my sensitivity table, and it says for the row input cell, where is my row? Vertical is my row. For the row input cell, what is it referencing? It is referencing unit price, right? It's referencing unit price. For the column input cell, what is it referencing? It's referencing annual volume, colon horizontal, right? So I click on annual volume. Annual volume is 40,000. I press OK. So we are like this. I go to my data, go to what if analysis, data table, row. What are my row? My row are my unit price. No, my row is my volume. Excel 101, can you imagine? My row is my volume. Rows are like this, columns are like this. So my row is my volume and my row is my volume and my column is my price. I press OK and we can see what happens. Right? Okay. Okay, great. So we can see what happened that Excel has given us a range, right? So when you are go tomorrow, if we are taking this estimate to the board, right? If we say at the price of 45 units and volume of 40,000, this is our MPV, right? But we can see that on no account, even at a range of 30,000 to 50,000 volume, we can still see that MPV is negative, right? We know that if we are going to keep our price at 40, on no account should our volume go below 30,000, right? So you see the power of this thing, right? It just gives you a guide on how to plan for the future, right? So if we didn't run this sensitivity analysis, right, we might not know that at this price, our MPV is negative, right? It's possible that at the price of 100,000, our MPV, at the volume of 100,000 rather, and the unit price of 35, our MPV would be our MPV will be profitable. So it's possible the board can come to you and say, okay, we want to see if price is $35 and volume is 100,000. So you are going to then build a sensitivity analysis uh, that will show the range of outcome into up to 100,000. So that is that for sensitivity analysis. Rollins, most definitely the recording will be shared after the session. So that is that for sensitivity analysis, right? Right. So remember we said there's a limitation with sensitivity analysis. What is the limitation? The limitation is that sensitivity only allows us to compare how a one output will move. So this is one output when one or two input changes. But we might want to know, okay, what is our MPV going to be if this is 50, this is 30, this is 70, and this is 200, right? Sensitivity analysis cannot help us answer that question, and that is where scenario manager comes in, right? So let us go to scenario manager. So for scenario manager, what the board asks us to do, the board asks us to create three scenarios: worst case, base case, and best case, right? So what we're going to do is they didn't give us a guide, so we'll just use our best judgment to create those scenarios. Now, there's a best practice for scenario manager. Also, if you have questions, you could type in the chat box, right? I'm seeing them. So there's a best practice for scenario manager, right? And the best practice for scenario manager is that you should name every cell where you have inputs or outputs. And why do we do that? We do that because when you are creating a scenario report, all these inputs and these outputs, they are going to be included in the scenario report, right? And in the scenario report, if you do not name this cell, what you are going to be seeing is C5, $45. Then you now see something like C18, what's the figure? Let's say 470,000, which is not very ideal, right? So that is the purpose of naming our cells before we do our scenario manager, before we use scenario manager for scenario analysis. So there's one way I could do it. I could just sit on this cell, go here and type unit price, and just like that, I have named it. So when I go, I say equals to unit price, it will give me that figure. But imagine I have like, let's say 50 rows. Am I going to start going one by one, typing? That will just be a waste of my time. So we're going to show you a shortcut that you can use to name multiple cells all at once, right? So I have brought this for us. So ideally what we would have done is we would have been typing all this by ourselves, but I've done the works, and so we'll just show you how to apply that technique to name your cells. So if I want to name my cells, I bring the names I want to name my cell to the right. It could also be to the left, but we already have some data there, right? So it's not going to be very ideal we put it there. So I highlight like this. I go to formulas, I go to the names section. I go to formulas, I go to the name section, and then I go to create from selection. So it says create names from values in the top row, left column, bottom row, right column. As we can see, we have our names in the right column. So I unclick this, I press OK. And right now it seems like nothing happened, right? But if I click this drop down, we see that all the names that we have named ourselves appear here. Now pay attention to my cursor. See where my cursor is. If I go down, I click revenue. Can you see where my cursor moved? Yeah. So that is the power of naming your cells. Now we are now going to use Scenario Manager to create. We're going to use Scenario Manager to create scenarios and then run the scenarios to see how they work, right? So you remember these figures, we got these figures from somewhere, and these figures, we got them from here. These figures represent the base case estimates done by Zenith Food Co. finance team, right? So let us see how that works. So I go to data, I go to the what if analysis section, I go to Scenario Manager. So what is it telling? It's saying us no scenarios defined. Choose to add scenario. I click on add. So we say add scenario name. What is scenario name? Scenario name is just whatever you want to name that scenario. In this case, I'm going to name it base case. But you could name it any other thing whenever you are doing yours, right? It could be the chairman scenario, finance controller scenario, director scenario, consultant A scenario, consultant B scenario. I've already named 5 scenarios. So you could create up to 10 scenarios using this tool, right? So the changing cells. The changing cells are, you just select the input section, right? Where you have your inputs, because that is where we are going to be adjusting. That is where your adjustments will be, right? Inputs are the numbers we can change. It's only inputs you can change, right? So I'm going to highlight here like this as the changing cell C5 to C11, correct? And then comments. So sometimes it's not a must, but best practice is just ideal for you to put a comment to remind you of how you came up with this scenario. So I'm going to say Zenith Food Co. finance team base case estimates, and I press OK, and you see it has shown the list. Can you see why we had to name those cells? If we didn't name those cells, we would have probably been seeing C4, C18, C this, and C that, right? Okay, increase the font size. So I press OK, and we have created one scenario. We have created one scenario. So when you say font size, the root Ogechi, do you mean the dialog cell or this Excel? Maybe you should type so that I'll be clear. So we have created one scenario, best case, but the board said we should create 3 scenarios, which is base case, worst case, and best case. So let us create a best case, a worst case for scenario. So in my worst case, I want my unit price to drop, and we want our cost to increase. Let's take this to 35. Maybe we sold lower than we planned, and our fixed cost shot up. I'm just going to leave this alone and just focus on the one that affects business operations. So I have this scenario. Let me save this scenario. Data, what if analysis, scenario manager, add. So I'm going to name this worst case. And the beauty about Scenario Manager is the same range that you've picked during when creating your first scenario, it will maintain it for you, right? Unless you want to change it. So still we want to keep things within this range. How did I come up with this scenario? I could just say it's clearer now. Okay, thank you, Timmy Tokwe. I could just say based on should I say tough competitors already operating in the market. So it could be anything, just something to remind you of how you came up with this scenario, and this is just what I think should work for me. I press OK. Shows me my list. See the importance of naming your sales, right? I press OK. And what it is now is that I have another scenario. So that's how I can keep creating. I could have 10 scenarios. Like I said, chairman scenario, consultant A scenario, just whatever. Just you just use this to create as much scenario. You look at the range and then you plan accordingly. So lastly, let's create a best case scenario, right? So in the best case, I'm going to say my unit price, we sold at a peak of $55. We're able to beat down unit cost as low as possible. We sold more than we estimated, and we are also able to bring down our fixed costs. So let me save this as another scenario. I go to what if, I go to data, I go to scenario manager. I say I'm going to add another scenario. I'm going to name this scenario best case. Changing sales, same sales. How did I come up with this scenario? I'll say based on stability observed in the economy, right? So I just choose that based on stability observed in the economy. Let's ignore the typo. And voila. I now have 3 cases, right? So I could decide I want to create a root Ogechi case. I want to create a Jalil. Yes, Jalil, we are going to drop the recorded video after the session. I want to create a Jalil case. I want to create a Rollins case. I want to create a webinar case, and I just keep creating as much as I want to see. That is the power of Scenario Manager. That is the power of Excel What If Toolkit, right? So now we have our different scenarios. Now let us run our scenarios. To run my scenarios, I'll just go to data, I go to what if, I go to Scenario Manager, I go to best case. I want you to observe this whole area, right? I go to base case, I say show. Can you see? My data has updated. I say, okay, I want to see the worst case. I say show. My data has updated. I want to see the best case. I say show. My data has updated. So when I'm presenting to the board, I go and say, in the best case scenario, I click on show. If price is this, unit is this is what we're going to end. In the worst case scenario, which was advised by consultants, or in this consultant A scenario, we came up with a figure, this, that, and this is what our result is going to look like. In the best case scenario, consultant B scenario, we came up with an estimate, and so that is how Scenario Manager helps us to make proper decisions. But there's a better way to even use Scenario Manager, right? Instead of me switching, I could just see the range all at once, right? And if I want to see the range all at once, what do? I go to some. Okay, let me start from the top. After I've created my scenarios, right? So I go to data, I go to what if analysis, go to Scenario Manager, I go to summary, and it's asking me what are the result sales. What it's asking for is what are the output sales, right? And remember we said outputs are the results that are important to us, that the metrics that are important to us. So me personally, I feel looking at this data, I think my contribution is important to me. I click on contribution, I hold control because I want to see it. I want to see the effect of those changes on more than one output, right? So that's why I said scenario is like an improved tool to sensitivity analysis. You know, sensitivity analysis limits us to only 2 inputs and 1 output, right? But you see that we were able to change 4 inputs in this scenario, and we want to see how sensitive changes in those inputs are to these 3 metrics that are important to us. So I'm going to see my contribution. I want to see the effect of the changes of those inputs on my contribution, my profit, and my MPV. So how am I selecting this thing? Let me start from the top. So I click on contribution, I hold my control key, I click on profit, I hold my control key, I click on MPV. So I'm saying that these three scenarios or these three outputs, these three metrics are important to me, and I want to see the changes, how they change when unit price, variable cost, annual volume, and fixed cost changes. I press OK, and what Excel will do is Excel will create a table for me and give me a range of outcomes. Can you see this? So when we are going to the board, if they ask us what if price increases, what if price reduces, what if volume goes up, what if that's why we call it what if tool analysis. Whatever scenario you can think of, what if you can use the Excel what if tools to create as much scenario as possible. So we have how many outcomes is this? Is one, two, three, we've seen 9 outcomes, right? In this sensitivity analysis, we saw how many outcomes? 15 outcomes. So that is the power of this tool. What if this? What if that? What if interest rate is this? What if interest rate is that? What if it goes up? What? You just use these tools to create scenario, and then based on different scenarios that you have come up with, you could make a decision, or if necessary, you know that you have to tweak your plan, or you could say we need to. Let's assume that if annual volume was 100,000, our MPV would have been positive, right? So that means that if we want to, let's say we want to use pricing strategy to penetrate the market, if we are going to use it at $5 to enter the market, we need to ensure that we hit peak volume, right? So that is the power of sensitivity analysis and scenario manager, which I like to call Excel what if toolkit analysis, right? So what are my key takeaways from this webinar? My key takeaways, or what I want you to take away from this webinar, is whenever you want to see how one output reacts to changes in one or two inputs, you could just use your sensitivity table. You can also use your scenario manager to do that, but I think it just saves you a lot of time by using your sensitivity analysis tool. And then if you want to see how multiple assumptions, right? Let's say 7 assumptions or seven assumptions that you feel are key in your business and are very volatile. I want to see the effect of changes in those inputs on various outcomes, right? Your outcomes could be more than three, but we just those three, right? We would have chosen everything: revenue, cost, fixed cost, everything. We could have chosen that, but we just said let us stick to the three core metrics, right? Which was contribution, profit, and MPV. In that kind of case, you use your scenario manager, right? So whenever you are working with an estimate, it is always ideal for you not to go with a single number. It is always ideal for you to go with a range. So that is that on Excel what if toolkits. And all this you could get if you join this wonderful opportunity that is available to you, right? And that opportunity I'm talking about is the Financial Modeling Academy, right? So, what is the Financial Modeling Academy? The Financial Modeling Academy is a scholarship program through a partnership between D Brown Consulting and FMI Canada, right? So, the program is designed to help finance professionals to build practical job-relevant financial modeling skills and prepare for globally recognized financial modeling certification, right? I'm also excited to share with you that registration for our next cohort will officially open the 27th of July 2026, right? So if you'll be looking for a structured learning experience that combines technical financial modeling training, real-world business applications, expert support, and international recognized certification pathway, this is an opportunity for you to explore. And just, should I call this extra information, I too went through this academy, and the impacts and the opportunities and the learnings has been very, very immense. in my career, right? So if you are interested in participating in this program or know someone in your network who will benefit from this scholarship, we encourage you to register as soon as possible, as the application opens next week, Monday, 27th of July, right? So my team will be sharing the registration link and additional information across our channels. Since it's LinkedIn, you saw this, you could also check our Instagram page, our YouTube page, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you like, right? So if you have any questions about maybe your eligibility about the program, the scholarship process, the certification pathway, or the program itself, please reach out to us at fma@dbrownconsulting.net, and you can call this number 0812 333 4434. Please reach out to us, fma@dbrownconsulting.net. You can call us on 8133 4434. We are always available to answer your questions, right? So feel free to contact us after today's webinar, and a member of our team will be happy to assist you. Feel free to contact me also, and I'll be happy to assist you. So right after this, we are going to play short videos that will give you a better understanding of the program, what participants can expect, and the impact it has on past cohort members, right? So just a reminder that for those of you that stayed to the end of this for this webinar, we are going to send you the case study file, we are going to send you the empty Excel, and then we are going to send you the solution file, right? So thank you once again for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming many of you into the financial modeling cohort, which registration opens on Monday, 27th of July, 2026. I really hope you enjoyed this webinar and you took a lot of learnings that you apply in your everyday work. So bye for now and see you next time.
Hello, I'm David Brown. I'm here to talk to you about the Financial Modeling Academy Scholarship for Africa. We're so proud to bring this to you in partnership with Financial Modeling Institute. This completely crashes the price of the wonderful Financial Modeling Academy, where you're going to learn all the different things in 8 weeks, all the different things about how you build models from scratch, valuation, also understanding how to do the exam, the cost of the exam, the cost of actually the mock exam, the cost of the exam prep guide, the cost of all the past examination reviews, the cost of the program itself, and then the general cost of the community that you're going to join to answer all your questions. All of this at a hugely discounted rate. So click here to see how you can benefit from this wonderful experience, and let's join for the next academy and the next cohort. I'll see you in the next cohort.
To be sincere, it has done a lot, because immediately I finished the training, I knew that it was time to move from my former place of work. And I said, running up my CV, I told myself it was time to move. And then even before I got my exam, accreditation and all that, I told myself, you have to, push on your CV and start moving. And immediately my exam came out was one of the things that gave me that push, because the interviewers asked me, yes, I have my AFM, and then they asked me a few things on financial modeling. I was able to answer, and then I got the job. Thank you. Okay, hi, my name is Gloria Odova. I am a chartered accountant. I work as a tax manager at Darby Industries, Ladipo. I joined the company this year in 2024 as the admin tax manager. Okay, so I belong to the ICANN tax platform. So I think it was pasted there last year. So it's something I've been planning to do, but I never had the opportunity and a good platform to train for it. So immediately I saw the post, I just knew this was the opportunity to go out. I wanted to train or get a good training of financial modeling, but I didn't have a good information or a good platform to go about the training. So when it was posted on ICANN tax platform, I saw it as a good opportunity to go ahead and train for it. Okay, I expected to, like, after the training, to be good in my financial modeling skills and all that. During the training, I wasn't so, I expected a physical structure, where you come for the training, but then I saw that everything was done virtual. At first, I was a bit skeptical, but then the short videos that Mr. David was putting up, it was interesting because anyone that I don't understand, I would just quickly go back, slowly look at them and then get a grip of it before I could go to the next video. So at the time, I got used to it and it started flowing, and then I started getting used to it. So it became very interesting at that time.